Hello everybody, welcome back. We have some additional changes that were announced like 30 minutes ago by the guys over at Forgotten Empires. So yeah, the patch 5.8 already has a slew of balance changes. I already made a video on that, I'll link that in the description. But these were some more changes that were just announced right now. So I'm going to, talk about them briefly and then talk about everything in the sort of, larger context of this balance patch. So yeah, it should just be a quick update video. But yeah, let's get right into it. New change, fire galleys do 1 damage to fishing ships, reduced from 3. If you've seen any of the water maps in ECL so far, the early feudal age is absolutely dominated by the fire galley. If you're a Viking player, which don't have access to fire galleys, you just really don't stand much of a chance if you're on the flank versus a civ that can make fire galleys. And it's just all fire galley spam all throughout the early to mid feudal age. And one of the big reasons for this is, 1, because fire galleys kill galleys in small numbers, and 2 is that fire galleys used to just obliterate fishing ships. Like, if you put a fire galley next to a fishing ship, it would die very quickly. And now it does 1/3 of the damage that it used to. And I, did some tests just in the scenario editor, and it is way slower. It takes a long time for fire galleys to kill fishing ships now. So this will hopefully balance the early water game triangle a little bit better, and will allow you to escape with your fishing ships if they're being attacked by fire galleys, much more frequently. Okay, so the next change is that villagers and towers no longer do reduced damage against walls before the Castle Age. This was a change that they had originally made for patch 5.8 that I discussed previously, and now they're reverting back to the status quo, exactly what it is right now. So essentially, this was done to placate arena players who were upset because they were being trushed all day, because they're like, this is arena, I don't want to be trushed on arena. Because villagers would just batter down walls very quickly, and then the extra towers from watchtowers would also help in that. But because they reduced the HP of walls in the feudal age in the FE expansions from 1800 to 900, aggressive openings on arena became just that much easier. So if arena players want to have their classic AOC arena experience but with the new civs, they'll just have to play the custom map arena, which makes the walls in the dark and feudal age just 1800 HP, and the gates whatever corresponding HP it is. I think it's 2750. But the reason that they decided not to implement this change is because a lot of people were really unhappy with it. A lot of expert players felt that this change affected a lot of other maps besides Arena. And that is correct. You don't want to upset the balance on every other type of map for villagers, trying to execute some sort of aggressive strategy or even defending against these sorts of things. On other maps other than Arena, where this change was supposed to be targeted, now essentially it's just status quo, don't worry about it. The next change is that Camel Archers, both elite and non-elite, require 4 more seconds to be trained to make each unit at the castle before getting Kasbah or conscription. So it used to be 21 seconds, now it is 25 seconds. I actually really like this change because Camel Archers, you all know them, they're a very strong castle unit. They're somewhat analogous to the Mangudai in that they are fast, and they do a lot of damage, and they feel quite unstoppable in large numbers, and instead of killing siege weapons, these guys kill Mangudai and Camel Archers. One of the reasons that Camel Archers were considered even stronger than Mangudai is, 1, they took less bonus damage from cavalry counter units like halberdiers and such because they were classified as camels as opposed to the Mangudai being classified as cavalry. And the other reason is that they actually trained a lot quicker. So Camel Archers used to train it in 21 seconds, whereas Mangudai take 26 seconds to train. So, Mangudai, it take a long time to get a lot of them running, especially in the Castle Age. And now we're sort of, bringing the Camel Archer back down a little bit to pretty much even with the Mangudai in terms of creation time. They're still probably a stronger unit than the Mangudai in the Castle Age because they have the extra armor and the extra attack. But now they're not going to be as oppressive in the Castle Age because when you think of powerhouse Castle Age unique units, you think of stuff like the Plumed Archer and the Conquistador. Not so much the Mangudai, because they're very slow to train and they need a lot of upgrades to be good. Camel Archers, they're still going to be very good in the Castle Age, but it's going to take a little bit longer to get them out and running. So the next change is that Indian camels no longer receive +1 melee armor as part of their civ bonus for extra camel armor. So in the current balance, one of the Indian civilization bonuses is that their camels have +1 melee armor and +1 pierce armor. Now they are nerfing that so that the Indian camels no longer get +1 melee armor, they only get the extra pierce armor. So what does this change mean? Essentially, Indian camels were just the best camels in the game in pretty much every situation. I guess maybe they were slightly worse than like Byzantine camels in the Castle Age, but then you had the extra HP against ranged units, and yeah, whatever. Indian camels were really good, and they felt too often like a just stand-in for knights, that they were pretty much knights that did all the things that knights did, except also killed knights and were cheaper to make. So this nerfs those camels just a little bit. It makes Indians definitely a lot weaker in the pocket in team games where they were kind of oppressive, because the Indians with their cheaper villagers, and the fact that making camels is cheaper than making knights. Camels cost 55 food, 60 gold, something like that. Maybe it's 50 food, 60 gold, something like that. And then knights cost 60 food and 75 gold, so camels are cheaper than knights. And because Indians already save resources on their villagers because they have cheaper villagers, that gave them an incredibly strong ability to just churn out camels in the Castle Age in the pocket, as well as being able to boom up their economy behind it. And it really just kind of gave them an unfair advantage over most other civilizations. Now, camels are going to be a lot worse against, well, every single melee unit. So swordsmen are going to do better, knights are going to do better. That's not to say that knights are going to be a good counter to Indian camels, because any sort of camel is going to be good against the knight line or any sort of cavalry like that. Against pikemen and halberdiers, this isn't really going to matter. Halberdiers and pikemen still deal so much bonus damage against camels that one extra melee armor is not really going to be noticeable. But definitely, I think in the Castle Age in particular, any sort of melee unit, and most especially the knight line and the swordsman line, are going to feel a lot stronger against the Indian camels. Also, it makes other civilizations' camels at parity with the Indian camels. So if, you're a Berber pocket or even a Saracen pocket, and you're producing camels in the Castle Age, in terms of per unit quality, it's going to be the same as the Indians in these sorts of melee-on-melee fights. However, Indians, they still have an extra pierce armor, which is still significant in my opinion, because camels are historically pretty weak against ranged units, just because compared to knights, they deal less damage and they have less pierce armor, having no native pierce armor, whereas knights have 2. So just that extra 1 pierce armor is going to still make the Indian camels a bit more potent against archers than normal civilizations' camels. And so, you still have that feel of being a camel civilization as the Indians. And in the late game, Imperial camels still have 5 pierce armor. So you're still at, reasonable pierce armor levels. One extra pierce armor or 1 less melee armor might not seem like it's too big of a deal, but when you're looking at it over the course of many, many, many attacks, either, a unit attacking or a unit being attacked, these things really add up. I mean, just try playing a game without making any blacksmith upgrades and see how far you go. Blacksmith upgrades are important, and the Indian armor bonus was them getting a free extra scale barding armor. Now they just get the pierce armor end of it. So I think that's totally fine, and I think it's overall a pretty good change. So the last change is that the Slavic farming bonus is closer to the intended plus 15% value. Multiplier reduced from 1.31 to 1.28. So that is a 0.03 change. It's a minor nerf to the Slavs in their farming rate. I doubt you'll notice it much, if at all. Slavs are still an incredibly strong civilization on pretty much any sort of land map. They're a solid civ on Arabia, they're a very good civ on Arena, they're a very good civ on Black Forest, and in team games as well. A little bit weaker on the flank, but definitely a good pocket civ in team games. So they're supposed to be plus 15% farming rate. I mean, that's what the bonus says it should do. So really this is just more of just trying to make it actual plus 15%, or as close to that as they can. So I don't think this is going to be too big of a deal one way or the other. You can keep on playing Slavs, they'll be just fine. So with the powers of very basic video editing magic, I have brought you the rest of the patch notes for patch 5.8. These changes were announced already, I already did a video on it, but as far as I'm aware, all of these changes, with the exception of the villager damage versus alls being reduced in the feudal and dark ages, all of these other changes are going live. And so I was just going to briefly talk about all of these patch 5.8 changes in their entirety, and what do they mean in the greater context of the current metagame. So looking at most of the nerfs, I think that most of the civilizations that were considered overpower were nerfed. I don't agree with many of the nerfs, but at least they are nerfs. And, you can't be too unhappy with that. So I definitely think some of the most important things to nerf were the Berbers in some way. I'm glad they put Camel Archers, increase their training time, because Camel Archers were really good, man. I think that some of the more impressive bonuses, like the Italians on water with their fishing ship cost reduction, like Italians were just the best water civ, and they kind of needed to be brought back in line a little bit. Burmese, I don't even know if Burmese nerfs are enough, but hey, we'll give it a try. Karambit nerfs for the Malay. Karambits are still a really good unit, and I'm not sure if these changes are going to do a lot to change that, at least not in the games I've played on ECL Arabia, which is essentially just the Arabia map that has the balance changes. And I still think something should be done about Malay on Arena specifically, because Malay are really good on Arena, like way too good. And of course the Korean nerfs for their trushes. So all of these things I think were covered pretty well. Oh yeah, the Indian nerfs to their camels. Another one that was really good in my opinion. So all of those are really, at least in the right direction, and I appreciate that. There are a few things though that I still would really like to see, like buffs to weak civilizations. There were a few included here. The Vietnamese got a buff with their Rattan Archers having extra HP, and they now have just a block plus 20% HP for their archers, as opposed to having a staggered effect ending up at plus 20% in the Imperial Age. They just now get plus 20% from the Feudal Age. And then Khmer received Arbalest, and I believe that was the only buff. Or those two were the only buffs. I guess Mamelukes were slightly buffed. So yeah, there's still, I think, a lot of civilizations that could use some love. Saracens could still use a bit more. Civilizations like the Goths could use some buffs. Teutons, maybe. Just don't ask anyone on the AoE zone. And, maybe a few other civilizations I'm forgetting about right now. Portuguese. So I'm still definitely looking to see these sorts of changes coming in the future. But overall, I'm glad that we're at least getting these changes. And I think that the game after this balance update is ultimately going to be one that is more balanced than the current live patch, regardless of your level of play. If you're 2K plus Vubly or 1600 HD, I think you're going to be playing a better game of Age of Empires, and that's the most important thing. Still looking for more changes in the future, but good step in the right direction. So that's it for now. I assume this is going to be the last changes to patch 5.8. So thank you all for watching this update video, for listening to me ramble on, and definitely leave a like if you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.